everyone, welcome back to the Goddesses channel, and today I'm going to be talking about evidence of the abstract spectrum. It's everywhere, but let's talk about it so you can see it too. One of my first downloads about the abstract spectrum was when I had this vision of a blob floating up from a gooey surface, and this gooey surface was continually moving, and these blobs were a result of more violent waves that released a ploop of liquid or this slimy substance into above, so it separates from that gooey surface. And you know what? I tried to explain this to people. Sometimes it made sense, sometimes it didn't to them. Maybe it was according to their level of awareness. But I then saw it in a Kurzgesagt video where they were explaining why are we born, what is the point of existence. And I'll put the image here. So this makes a lot of sense because we are separating from God, or what is love, our true essence, and we are becoming a blob, separated and isolated into this world of fear. Sometimes I think maybe the top layer actually blobs down into the bottom and goes into love, and then it makes me think there's a giant yin-yang in the entire world. Whoa. That's another topic though. So one of the biggest forms of evidence is the Hawkins scale. You might be familiar with this already. I've mentioned it a lot of times on my channel. It is the levels of consciousness as well as how they relate to emotions. So higher up there's love, lower down there's fear. And it also shows the duality of this reality, where the emotions above 200 are more associated with love and the ones below are with fear. Also, the higher you go, the more expanded your consciousness becomes, and the lower you go, the more contracted your consciousness becomes. But there is a lot of gray areas, not just one or the other, right? In duality, there's always a spectrum, and it goes from love to fear or fear to love. We are constantly going back and forth on the Hawkins scale. This also matches up with involution and evolution. Involution, when we come from pure nothingness and godliness into this world of reality and fear and forgetfulness of who we are, and that's involving in this reality. You can see a video where I talked about this, my first abstract spectrum video. And evolving is going past and transcending our existence to become one with ourselves and everything, basically, becoming nothingness. The Hawkins scale might be kind of obvious, but the other one I want to show you is the rhythm of music and even voices, because voices can be considered music. So I didn't actually realize this until I saw a video of the 10 weirdest music genres by Watch Mojo. It's a YouTube video, and they show the genre called speedcore, which is a version of EDM where they exceed 300 beats per minute. There's also subgenres, splittercore, which exceeds 600 beats per minute, and extra tone, which exceeds 1000 beats per minute. If a beat goes fast, like there is more anxiety in that type of tone, there's more fear associated. We just subconsciously feel it. It's not even something that I could explain, but when you listen to faster music, there's a lot more fear involved, a lot more just negative emotions that arise. But alas, this entire reality is full of negative emotions, right? And so we can learn to enjoy those. And I'm not saying your music is bad or whatever, but we don't actually realize the speed of our music and even the speed of what's popular nowadays. And that's why I needed this video to realize beats per minute actually shows us the vibration of higher consciousness and lower consciousness. So lower consciousness is much faster, and as you could see, speed core to splitter core to extra tone. When extra tone is, it actually sounds like that. Like, you could go look it up. Eventually our brain stops being able to process it and basically hears it as one singular tone. So as in something very contracted, right? At the bottom of the Hawkins scale, it's very contracted, and something that's like so much together and hardened. I'm not gonna call that oneness. I'll just say oneness is everything. Oneness is when you are expanded and you get to observe and see that yes, even the fear and the love aspects of me are one. So I'm not gonna call it oneness, but it does sound like one tone. It sounds like duh. Whereas contrasted with slower music such as jazz or slow classical, anything, any genre, as long as it's slower, less beats per minute, like say it goes dun dun dun, eventually that music will have so much space between it that it's much more space than it is even those beats, and you start feeling like there's only space. What's actually beautiful about this is that art is not complete without its negative space, and here you can see these are classic forms of negative space that are taught in art classes, that if a piece of art, a visual piece of art, only has things in it everywhere, then it's not pleasing to the eye and it wouldn't be something that we subconsciously are attracted to. Great art is something that we are subconsciously attracted to. And that type of art has beautiful shapes in the negative area as well. So that's why you can say that the negative space is quite important too. In this case, in music's case, you could say that the negative space is the sound. Now that is contradictory, isn't it? How could negative space be the sound part? Well, if you've ever meditated or you've come in contact with Buddhist philosophy, you might be familiar with the fact that silence is where divine knowledge and oneness is. So when it's widely spaced and expanded, those beats are expanded, that's where godliness comes through and that nothingness is apparent. In the contractedness, where beats are much more there and it sounds like one beat altogether, right? That's where there's so much less space and so much more density that you can't recognize, you can't even see the goodness. Of course, there will always be goodness, there's good and the bad, they always have to exist together. But there's something about silence that you have to pay attention to in order to recognize how truly beautiful and divine it is. And that's why in many Buddhist practices and even non-Eastern practices, going silent for one day or a few days or a week is considered to expand your consciousness. You get to see, why do you speak when you speak? And why do others speak when they speak? Why is it that I'm speaking? And other things like that. So as to show you when is it actually necessary to use that negative energy to propel yourself or to communicate with someone else. Because we can reduce negativity to a very small amount if we become aware of it. But we cannot become aware of it if we are constantly involved in it and we constantly use it and forget about our true essence, which is nothingness. So in order to become awakened, in order to become aware, slower music, meditation, and expansive emotions such as the ones aligned with love are more helpful in order to increase your consciousness or expand it. So now you'll hear in slower music the greater amount of space that exists there that helps you appreciate when there are actually notes in between that space. It's also really cool to think about voice as music, and I mentioned already that becoming silent helps us see that when we talk, it's for a reason, right? When other people talk a lot or when you talk a lot, you can't actually recognize what you're saying sometimes, and you have to slow down, you have to stop talking and think about what it is that you're conversing about, what you're trying to express, rather than continuing talking and hoping that something will work out with your words. It actually gets more confusing when you talk a lot more. Whereas if you know somebody who is silent, who only speaks when it is important. I think this is like a cliche in anime actually. There's like a silent person, or even in like regular TV shows, the very introverted, quiet person. When they speak, it's very important and everyone listens, right? Because what they're saying is very thought out and they know it's important to speak at that moment. So I was thinking about the rhythm of people's voices, and I realized this when I was like, you know what? How does our dog hear us? I have a dog, her name is Nuri. You can see her on my Instagram at Goddess Gaya. She doesn't exactly hear our words. Of course, she recognizes some words, but she mostly recognizes our tonality. And tonality is up and down, up and down. So when we're like, oh my God, Nuri, come, 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 then she knows that we want to play with her, we want to be loving, we want to be friendly. When she hears us being like, Nuri, what did you do? Or when she hears us yelling at each other and our tones are deep or lower, she knows something is up, and she hates when we yell. She goes all the way upstairs to run away from it. But she hears that tonality and she recognizes that our speech is going up when we're loving and down when we have more fearful energy. So along with that, she hears the rhythm, and from that she deduces what we're trying to communicate and what energy we're approaching her with. So if we approach her with, oh, Nuri, come here. I sound crazy as I'm talking, but I'm trying to show. Come here, Nuri, come. Then she knows we're being loving. If we're like, Nuri, why'd you do that? Don't do this. Or we're yelling like, come on, why did you listen to me? La da da da, da da da. Then she knows it's something to run away from. Like, she doesn't want to be around that. If you want to try this out, you can sit in another room and listen to someone else's speech. If they're talking on the phone, or even have the TV on and go into another room, put it on loud and hear what is the tonality. Are they speaking fast and low, fast and high, slow and low, or slow and high? What kind of feeling do you get from the tonality? What kind of musical experience do you receive from the speech? So the next one I have for you is the sleep stages. I'm gonna put a picture right here that shows what our body goes through, the different vibrations that our sleep cycle takes us in when we go deeper and deeper into sleep. When we fall asleep, we are at a faster vibration, right? And then we go lower and lower, and we slow down. So at these slower stages, and at the very slowest, is when we go down to meet God and we meet nothingness. At the deepest level of sleep, it is blank. And there is something remarkable that lucid dreamers could do. I think it's very rare, but lucid dreamers control their sleep, right? They control what they do in their dreams. But it is the awareness of dreaming that brings them the ability to control their dreams. When they are aware that they can control and that they are dreaming, they start being able to be more aware deeper and deeper and deeper in the stages of sleep. And in the book I read, Psychotherapy East and West, I'll put a picture right here and a link in this description as well. By the way, if you like this video, give me a like, I would love it. It really helps my channel and it helps YouTube show you more of what you like. So very practiced and skilled yogis can actually be aware in their deep stages of sleep. And that is actually becoming aware of your nothingness. Because if you become nothingness when you are deep sleep, that means you are aligning with God every time you slow down and you go into sleep. And this is why it's so important for us to rest well. Not getting proper sleep is so detrimental to our health, and not just our health, like literally everything in our life, our success, our relationships, our happiness, whatever it may be. Sleep is vital to all of it. The sun is setting, so I only have like light on half my face, but whatever. We call golden hour. So one of the best ways to learn how to lucid dream is actually to meditate. And why is that? Because meditation is actually conscious dreaming. We are going directly to our source, to our God self, our higher self, our nothingness, whatever you may call it. I call it God self on my channel. But there is a part of us that is actually pure love, pure nothingness. And in our deep stage of sleep, that's what we go and we become. Our body is just kept alive. We are barely breathing in order for our consciousness, our soul, to return back into our body and use our body for everyday reality, right? But the stages of sleep demonstrate that the abstract spectrum is real, because we are here at the fear state and we go lower down and we go to our sleep state to become more with the nothingness of God. So it actually goes back to the first metaphor that I gave in this video, where I said we are a plop that comes up from this liquid nothingness. This plop, we remember that there's reality, there's fear everywhere, we become involved in this, and then we plop down in sleep. Perhaps it is our consciousness that goes from the drop back into the liquidity. It is our body that's just being kept here by the fear state. Everything else around that plop is being held there because we have to go back to it. Eventually, that plop, in a physics sense, isn't able to go back down before time allows it to, before its destiny. That would be early death, right? So our consciousness returns, our love self, and then we keep going back to that plop and realizing that, okay, my work here is to do the work of love, and my true self is going to create more love in this world, blah, blah, blah. Yet it is the going back and forth that demonstrates the abstract spectrum, because we're never at one point or the other and time has stopped. The spectrum continues, and back and forth, there will always be a gray area of the abstract spectrum. The abstract spectrum. Oh my god, it's a tongue twister. So remember how I just said that we come back with love and do the work of love when we return to our round plop bodies? You could call that a shell, not even a body. We are in vessels. Our consciousness are in vessels that are here to do work using the tools of this world. The divine actually gives us messages as we are coming up out of our sleep. There are so many dreams that we go through at night. It would be impossible to go through and analyze each one. But if you wake up and you remember a dream, make sure you write it down, because there is a message in there for you that the divine wants you to know to help you with your reality and your life. Your love core and God self wants you to know something, and it gives it to you in a metaphor because it can't express it in words. It can only express it in abstraction, in emotions, and in metaphors. The people that you see in a dream or what happens in a dream, it's not actually what it's trying to tell you. It's trying to convey a message, such as a story. If you go to the root of a story, what is the message there? Every story that we find very beautiful, it has a deeper meaning to it. That deeper meaning is aligning with our soul and our subconscious. That's why we love that story, because it helps us remember our God self. It can also be seen in abstract art versus realistic art. Personally, I've always preferred abstract art more. There's something hidden and majestic and so beautiful that you can't even describe in words with abstract art. When you translate that abstraction into words or expressions, it just becomes something else. It's perfect the way it is. Alas, we need words to discuss abstract art, and even the terminology removes its abstraction. And then there is realistic art. It's the more representational version of God. So that representation, if you think about that word, what is it representing? It is representing the divine in a metaphor form. It is representing it so far. There are so many layers of hidden metaphors that the very last realistic one becomes something that we dissociate from the nothingness of God, and it becomes everythingness. It becomes this fear state reality. In realistic art, you can recognize, okay, this is a person, this is a ball, this is a trampoline, this is a building, da 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 da. You can recognize those things. Higher consciousness and higher evolved forms of God, more abstract, or you can say higher up on the abstract spectrum, they're less recognizable and less able to be talked about. Here lies abstract art. Here lies music without words. And we need both of these things in our life in order to stay connected. Actually, these things are everywhere, like I said, but we have forgotten to see them for what they are. You can abstract a piece of grass, you can abstract like my hand, you can abstract any pop music, and you can just start seeing that there is divine in here. And yet when it becomes way too real, way too recognizable, in fact, the recognizability of God in it disappears. And abstracting something actually involves either blurring the image, blurring your eyes, or going to another room, right? Like I said, going to another room and listening to words for their tonality without the identification, without the words used to communicate something in amongst ourselves within this fear state reality. We need such words because we have forgotten to communicate in an abstract way. We can only communicate using words because that's what our bodies recognize. And even me talking to you, I'm trying to awaken that abstract form of yourself within you, your God self or your higher self, so that it can blossom and recognize that God is in all things and everything is divine, everything is beautiful, and you can always go back to this when you need it. We don't always need it, but this skill is important when you need it, when you are in your hard times and you cannot see the good and the bad. The center, our core, lives here, and this is where your abstraction is if you want to connect with it. There's something interesting that I want to ask you. Where on the spectrum do you usually live, and where are you most comfortable? So I said I prefer abstract art more, right? I like to live more in the abstract realm. I'm happiest there. I'm most loving and comfortable, you could say. And yet, I do know it's important for me to come back, because without the contrast of the fear state, I would not even appreciate this. But this is where I'm most comfortable, higher up. For you, where are you most comfortable? Are you most comfortable down in the fear state, where people are continuously talking, you always have to be doing something, there's always pressure, there are always negative emotions involved, nothing is recognizable, and yet everything is everything, so you're like, where is nothing? I don't see any space, I don't see anything, any version of myself here. It's the forgetfulness. Or do you like being in the love state more? Do you like seeing everything for their hidden messages, seeing things as divine metaphors, aligning with your true self and the nothingness, and recognizing that there is a opposite side of your current reality? That's just a question for you. Whatever you may feel from that, put it down in the comments. I'm genuinely curious, because I like to be up here more, but where do you guys like to be? And lastly, I'm going to mention something very briefly. I want to do a whole video on this. There's something I also had a channeling about, and it's called the spiritual centers. I believe that around the world there are spiritual centers where time and energy is more dense. This is where God channels more of its information and things are more easily learned. So one of these areas I could say is the Himalayas, very specifically the mountain on top which Shiva lives. The entire Himalayan areas is quite wide and its teachings have spread quite wide. So this is one of the biggest ones in the world. But I do think that this area is also kind of like the abstract spectrum, because it is where time, energy, emotions, everything is more expansive, and it is higher aligned with God. I'm actually curious, is it because the tectonic plates, went higher up, like they touch the cosmos higher, so the earth, is merging, Mother Earth is merging with divine masculine space? But doesn't that actually remind you of that blob metaphor? Something coming from the contracted universe into the expanded universe, Well, just a food for thought. I wanted to mention it. I'll be doing a video on it later, so stick around on my channel, subscribe, like this video if you haven't already, and thank you for visiting. Thank you for watching all the way. Love you guys.